All right. Now, let's talk about the economic survey, which usually sets the tone for discourse ahead of the union budget. And the data and the observations that it contains are valuable, not just from the perspective of the academic, but also because it provides a glimpse into the key focus areas for the government. At a time of swirling uncertainty on the external front, the question is, what are India's priorities? How can it turn a challenge into an opportunity? That, and also, what is this amazing orange economy that has been spoken about, and what are the prospects there? Who better to speak about it than the primary author of that survey, Mr. V. Anantha Nageswaran. Please put your hands together for the Chief Economic Advisor of the Government of India. To speak with him, NDTV Profit's very own Managing Editor, Tamanna Inamdar, as well as Bureau Chief, Shrimi Chaudhary.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you, sir, for speaking with us.
You're welcome.
There is rarely a time in financial news coverage that things move so fast that the whole perspective of your conversation changes. And I was just thinking about it. We had an extensive, detailed and exciting economic survey. Then we had a promise-filled budget with some really new, innovative ideas. Then you had a monetary policy which added dimension. And here comes the India-US trade deal, announcement to framework in 4 days flat. I wonder, we journalists are gasping for breath. As the Chief Economic Advisor, how busy are your days right now? Let me start with that question.
Okay. If you guys have been sort of gasping for breath, you can imagine how it is inside. Over the last 6 to 8 months, as the PM has been saying, the Reform Express has been underway. So apart from these 4 things which you mentioned, and also you missed out the Indo-US free trade agreement that happened.
The EU. The EU-Indo free trade.
So that also happened in the last 2-3 weeks. And then, in general, I suppose, along with the overall geopolitical developments in other areas as well. So it's been quite an intense 1 year, I must say. And but we are happy that both these 2 trade agreements do set up the economy nicely for 26-27.
I think it's the reform bullet train, not just the reform express. Absolutely. Right now.
That's well put. Yeah.
Let me come to brass tacks though. Let's start talking about the GDP number. We have a range in the economic survey, 6.8 to 7.2%. This was, like I said, this is a week which seems has 3 months or 6 months of news flow in it. From then, taking into consideration the India-EU FTA, the India-US interim agreement ahead of the bilateral trade agreement that comes in, is there a good case to revise this upwards? A lot of headwinds which would have been baked into that range have now receded, and visibly.
No, I agree with you. So that's why I said in the couple of days since the US-India agreement came into the picture, I did say that there is an upside risk to my range of 6.8 to 7.2, or let's say the midpoint is 7. Now I can think of an upside that could last anywhere between 20 to 40 basis points. But the reason why I would still wait until we see at least the first quarter of data for the new financial year. First, we have to wait for how the GDP numbers, new revised series, and the new base year play out. And secondly, simultaneously, if you read the economic survey preface, we talk about the 3 global risk scenarios, and they're also beginning to play out simultaneously. The way the volatility in financial markets has been rising in multiple asset classes, etc. Those spillover effects are still probably underway, etc. So there are, while India-specific developments have been positive unambiguously, we need to also factor in these global risk factors. And if we do that, then I think we need to take a calibrated look at how far I can increase my growth projections, or am I comfortable with the range that I have already indicated, is something that we are still working our way through that.
No, fair enough, but all things remaining the same. Between the economic survey in the last day of January and now, the volatility in commodity prices, say, remains the same. Other global risk factors remain the same. Maybe AI comes in as another risk factor, I don't know. But one major, very visible, glaring problem seems to have receded. Is it fair to say that 7.4% is not an out of the park kind of an upper end now that we can look at?
Before I answer your question, I must say I'm very impressed with the way you said everything else remaining the same. I thought only we economists keep using ceteris paribus, etc. This is the first time I'm hearing a journalist using those expressions. Ceteris paribus, of course, you said other things remaining the same. So I'm quite...
So we're listening and learning.
So, I mean, look, again, but unfortunately we know that other things are not remaining the same, right? I mean, gold went from 4,000 to 5,300 and came back to 4,600, now again back to 5,000. And what we are seeing in copper, etc., or for that matter, our own bond yields now close to 6.75, 10-year bond yields, all these factors are also happening simultaneously. Yes, I have to put on the positive side of the ledger the US-India free trade agreement, which wasn't expected in general, and our own projections of 6.8 to 7.2 did assume that status quo would continue and not an announcement would happen, and therefore on that score you're absolutely right. But I also need to understand that, as I said, other things are playing out as well. But on balance, I would still say that now I'm prepared to concede that there is an upside risk to my growth estimate rather than a downside risk. So it's skewed towards the right side rather than the left side of the tail.
Mr. Nageswaran, on the trade deal itself, we have seen, the initial agreement talking about, stopping oil from Russia. That's one of the conditions. Just wanted to understand that whether it will have an impact overall, not just diplomatically, but also financially. Are you reading that India may face potential loss as a result?
Look, I think these are relatively sensitive, and I don't think there is much to be gained by speculating on these things in public. Okay? At the same time, I can say that oil prices will be subject to, again, using Tamanna's phrasing, other things being equal, if the Iran situation doesn't get out of control in the Middle East and oil prices remain the same. So from an oil procurement perspective, it may not necessarily mean a big deal of difference to India. And also Russia is aware of the fact that after the Rosneft and Lukoil sanctions were announced, there was a natural tendency for India to remain cautious because we didn't want to expose our financial system to sanctions as well. So they also understand the compulsions, just as many other countries also take measures to safeguard their domestic industry in the face of sanctions. I mean, so when Naira Energy got shut out, when Microsoft Office, removed their email client server facilities, even Zoho couldn't offer them an alternative because they were serving European customers as well. So they didn't want to get caught in that sanctions web. So there are compulsions and countries understand that. So I don't think this will be a major problem area for us.
Just also wanted to understand that India and US has trade surplus with 18% now we agreed upon. Do you see that thing continuing? We will remain trade surplus with 18%?
No, I don't think obviously you should look at India's duties alone in isolation. It has to be seen in the light of what are the duties that other countries face. And if you read the statement this morning, you would have also noticed that there is a line about that says India will continue to negotiate for lower duties from the 18% level. So 18% in isolation might appear as if it is higher than what it was 1.5 years ago or whatever, or 1 year ago. But obviously other countries also in the region, your competing countries face a similar or even slightly higher duty. So in that sense, I think it will continue to serve as well.
I just have a couple of follow-ups, and I'm going to rephrase Shrimi's question and ask it again because I think it's an important one. And I understand that we're waiting to hear official word on how much India reduces Russian oil, do we shut the tap, etc. My question is, can we afford to? Does the math work with Venezuelan oil coming in larger quantities? What if there is a situation where we have to reduce what we get in from Iran as well? How does the math work where we sit right now?
Obviously, if you speak of math, then math has to be worked out rather than being able to answer off the cuff. So these questions are not that easy to answer off the cuff. We need to work out the math before we can give you an answer.
It sounds like it would be a tough situation. So just let me put the first part of the equation in play. Can we afford to go to zero on Russian imports as of today? Or will it have to be pared down?
As I told Sharmi, I don't think it is useful for us to speculate on this in public, and I don't think that is the commitment we have. We haven't said anything of that sort. So I don't think we should be, looking at too much of hypotheticals at this point.
Okay. If I may ask you on the rupee, the currency has been in pain because of a lot of factors, including, I think, tariffs are part of it. Crude prices, I would say, a year ago to now, we're pretty much the same. Eased off, gone up, eased off. So that's not the big pain point. Do you see the rupee now strengthening, and maybe if we see a reversal of what has happened with foreign flows, or at least FPI flows, how do you think that figure or that situation now pairs out?
I personally think that the rupee will be one of the big beneficiaries of this trade agreement with the United States, because with respect to foreign investors, whether direct or portfolio investors, for them this was a stumbling block, because the questions were raised about whether China +1 was becoming India +1, etc., and portfolio flows also, apart from other considerations, valuations, no AI story, etc. I think this damages the sentiment quite significantly, and to the extent that this is removed, this barrier is removed, I do believe that the Indian rupee in 26-27 will be one of the beneficiaries of this trade agreement with the US.
Do we retrace a lot of the losses that we've seen? I think close to 50 basis. Do we retrace the losses in the last 1 year or so? Or
loss of what?
I mean, the slide of the rupee, yeah.
Look, I mean, it's difficult to give you a precise number in terms of the forecast for the Indian rupee dollar exchange rate, but I do believe that we will definitely at least see the rupee not following a one-way path towards weaker levels. But again, as I said in the case of your earlier question about the growth rate, there are other things that are also happening simultaneously, and in the economic survey, we did point out that in general, if you take a last 5-year view or last since millennium kind of view, the Indian rupee has not been an outlier in terms of depreciating against the US dollar.
Mr. Nageswaran, how are you reading the zero tariff? I wanted to understand, as India is getting zero tariff on select items, however, US is getting across the basket. Wanted to understand how you reading that. Is it concerning, A? And second, do you see any impact coming on overall government receipts? With government receipts, with customs playing an important role in this with 18% tariff?
No, I think two things. First, on the second question on government receipts, right? No, look, when you have an expanded economic activity happening, the customs duty receipts being on the lower side is easily offset by expanded economic activity and tax revenues coming from other sources, whether it is employment generation leading to higher income taxes, or whether it is GST transactions, multiplier effects of higher economic activity and higher domestic production to cater to external markets, because now you have access to different markets, EU countries and the US, that easily will take care of the customs duty receipts angle that you are pointing out. But look, zero duties our reduced duties are part and parcel of every trade agreement we have entered into. So why is it this different? I mean, we have agreed to reduce import duties on automobiles as part of the European Union trade agreement as well. So, I mean, that is part of the game. You reduce access and you reduce duties and they reduce duties, and that is how you expand the pie in total. So this is nothing unique about this.
No, why I'm asking that, because of course we have just seen the budget with all the budgetary targets for both, indirect and direct taxation. I'm not sure whether this will be factored in that. So are we going to see some change in the budget estimations?
No, budget estimates are already quite conservative and reasonable. If you look at the overall tax buoyancy assumed in the budget is 0.8, which is much lower. Of course, you might say that is because mainly influenced by the lower number for GST, because compensation cess is not there. If you look at the other taxes, your buoyancy rate assumption is 1.1, but there again 1.1 is consistent with the long-term average, but not in the last 5 years when the buoyancy was higher. So we are being conservative already.
I'm going to switch tack a little bit. We'll talk about the Indo-US trade deal, but I want to look at it from our perspective. At the start of these negotiations about a year ago, there were a couple of things that were in conversation. One of them was that even without the pressure that was being exerted on us to come to a certain deal, India needed to reduce her tariffs and her non-tariff barriers across the world. Do you think that in that sense this is a step in the right direction? And do you think our domestic industry is actually ready for what is to come as we see the consequences of these 5 deals? I won't even talk about one. These 5 deals play out.
Look, it's a good question, and the answer is not straightforward, because it is a balancing act. Because we know that from the point of view of competitiveness for our own manufacturing, we need to reduce duties on primary and intermediate products. At the same time, we do understand, and as all other countries do as well, that in a world of geopolitical fragmentation, you do need to have some protection. Otherwise, indigenization will not happen. But this is a statement I can make as a matter of principle, but how do we arrive at the right balance between the two depends on sector to sector, product to product, etc. So we need to do both. And that's not the most interesting of answers, but that is the most realistic of answers.
No, but it's the most relevant of answers, because if you look at the events in just the last week, we've had a budget which has focused on self-reliance, and then we have had, sandwiching it, trade deals which have talked about opening up at a time when the world is becoming more protectionist. It's each country for themselves.
The budget also did a lot in Part B of the budget speech on the finance bill. You will see a lot of customs duty reductions on many products, whether it is aircraft parts and components or nuclear energy capital goods, chemicals. So I think,
but again, the ones we need to become self-reliant.
Exactly. So we need to make sure that we are having lower import duties on input-oriented products, which is what we have done in the budget as well. So self-reliance does not mean that you keep customs duty higher. Self-reliance means you know where to calibrate it. That is what the budget does. And more importantly, the survey also points out, yes, we do need to give space for domestic production to happen, but protection cannot be in perpetuity, and protection has to be always in return for certain quid pro quo from the industry in terms of export performance and achieving export competitiveness. So it is a balancing act, and we are trying to do both at the same time, choosing the areas where we have to protect and how, and choosing the areas where we have to reduce the duties so that we can become competitive and self-reliant over time. So it has to be multiple approaches at the same time.
Just wanted to have your view on the fact that after this condition, India, US on that, stopping oil from Russia, how are you seeing India relationship with Russia going forward? Do you think it will get impacted?
I work for the Ministry of Finance.
Is it concerning for you?
I work for the Ministry of Finance and not External Affairs. You should be speaking to the Foreign Secretary on this.
But you always mention the geopolitical issues in your survey.
Of course.
So from that perspective, I'm trying to understand.
It is one thing to talk about geopolitical issues in the abstract and to comment on a specific bilateral relationship, which is both sensitive and strategic. So I would rather not trespass into the area of my colleagues.
I would like to come to you now on a broader question, and in the middle of all of the events that we talked about recently, I think one big one is the sort of stark realization of what artificial intelligence is going to do, specifically to one sector. For one day, it seemed as if the Indian IT service industry had been completely written off, then some sanity returned. Just wondering, what is your view on the impact of AI on us as a nation, on jobs, and on a very core sector?
Look, I mean, it is, again, unfortunately, it is difficult to give you precise answers to this. All of us know in the abstract that cognitive jobs will be under threat, coding will be under threat. People like Mr. Wembu are tweeting about Anthropic's products or how they are so good in coding, etc. So yes, and this is something that has been brewing for quite some time. But I think specific impact in terms of more than laying off people, in terms of future hiring will be impacted. And that is where I think we need to therefore make take non-cognitive jobs where AI complements humans or where jobs can be created independent of AI. And you look at the budget, there are 4 areas that stand out, although they were not packaged in that manner. Whether it is the care economy ecosystem or the allied health professionals or tourist guides or the orange economy that the budget spoke about, these are all areas wherein you are trying to create skilling and jobs in areas which will not be touched by AI, which can flourish independent of AI, and that is the way to look at. So one is to prepare your youth to be able to participate in the world that will be dominated by AI in cognitive spaces, and the other is to strengthen and make it respectable and fashionable to work in areas which are not necessarily located in steel and glass buildings.
That's an important one.
Yeah.
Your predecessor in 2017, in his economic survey, Mr. Arvind Subramaniam, first wrote a whole chapter about UBI, Universal Basic Income. And there was, I remember back then, a lot of talk about it. Are we reaching the time where we need to revisit that concept, or are we already there in some way, where there is provision for food, there are schemes like the GRAMG? How do you look at it conceptually? Because the world is beginning to talk about it now.
I think it's a very important question that you are raising, and I think I will not be able to do justice to it by giving you a 20-30 second answer, because I think human dignity isn't merely about just having an income to provide for your basic needs or beyond that. How you get that income also matters for your sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And second, when you talk of universal basic income, you are assuming that the fiscal authorities get the revenues that they need to be able to offer universal basic income for the population. But we know that capital is mobile, capital is fungible, and therefore businesses will relocate to areas, and you cannot ensure globally that there is no tax arbitrage. So that is why you have to also speak about the importance of a sense of national interest and responsibility on the part of businesses if the concept of UBI has to become widely practiced. Even then, I'm not sure about the behavioral implications of UBI being the answer, okay, to this problem. So I think this is an important issue that you raised, but I don't think it is possible to do justice within the time frame of this conversation.
So we have your commitment for another longer conversation on this then?
I think we need to have a longer conversation and also multiple perspectives on this issue to come up, and we should have some private sector also being there, and we need to hear some sort of a national compact here. It is not only a policy matter.
I take your point and I welcome it. We should try and organize as well. Thank you so much, sir, for your time today. Fantastically answered, every answer in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. 739 pages, 16 chapters. The economic survey this time around. So in case you missed any of that, what you heard today should capture quite a bit of it. But you should go and take a glance at the very least.